And welcome to today's webinar. We're going to give it just 60 more seconds for everyone to join, and then we will officially kick it off. Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar, Revolutionising School Expense Management, brought to you by Budgetly and The Educator. My name is Kylie Spear and I'm so happy to be your host over the next hour that we have together. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Our intention for today's webinar is for it to be as informative and also interactive as possible. So just a couple of housekeeping items to begin with. You'll notice there are a number of polls incorporated throughout today's presentation, as well as a Q&A session at the very end. I'd like to encourage you all to please participate in the polls and to submit as many questions as you'd like via the Q&A or chat functions. Your questions can be anonymous, or if you'd like a shout out, feel free to include your name as well. And lastly, just a reminder that today's webinar is being recorded and it will be emailed to you all after its conclusion. Well, there's certainly been much press coverage of late with respect to managing school expenses and how the current methods used often lead to inefficiencies and major headaches. The aim of today's webinar is to discuss genuinely helpful solutions to these common problems while empowering employees and enhancing efficiency and control. So firstly, just a little bit about Budgetly. The organisation provides next generation expense management tools, including employee cards, budget control and zero integration for a streamlined expense management process. Taking the helm of today's webinar are two presenters with a wealth of combined experience, no pun intended. Matt Clements is the head of growth at Budgetly, a SaaS sales specialist and startup culture enthusiast. Matt brings core values of purpose, mission, and culture to his team building approach. Matt has a proven track record of successfully spearheading initiatives that drive growth and lead dynamic teams. And Kirk Pearce is an accounts manager at Taree Christian Community College. An ex-bank officer, Kirk started working at the college part-time in the year 2000, and Kirk has put 4 children and 2 stepchildren through the college, with a further 3 grandchildren currently enrolled. Welcome to you, Matt and Kirk. Thank you so much for being here. I'll now hand it over to you to begin today's presentation.
Thank you very much for the introduction and welcome to everyone that has joined us. As we just mentioned, we're hoping that today can be as informative and as collaborative as possible for everyone included. So just kicking off, sorry, I've gone one slide too quickly, but just for the agenda today, to give everyone a little bit of a feel for how it will run, I'll just do a quick introduction again for myself and Kirk, who's joined us. We'll talk about some of the challenges that schools can encounter in expense management. At Budgetly, we talk to thousands of schools all over the country quite regularly. And we do hear a lot about how the processes currently work, where the obstacles are, and where some things are a little bit more difficult than they should be. We'll continue on with the shortcomings of current expense management processes. With some of the ways that they're currently managed, there can be a fair bit of tedious admin and paperwork that's involved. So we'll explore that a little bit further. We've got some statistics to talk about as well from thousands of schools that we've spoken to in where a lot of the time is spent. We'll talk about then some solutions to the problems as well, using automation, technology, apps and things like that to save time where possible is always a benefit. Everyone wants that. I don't know a single teacher that went through 3, 4, 5 years of tertiary education to then be filling out manual expense forms. And I've never met a finance person that enjoyed the paperwork either. So we'll talk about that automation and how you can transform the process and ideally save a fair bit of time. And then we'll hear from Kirk from Tari Christian Community College with Kirk's experience with Budgetly. So just as Kylie mentioned, the people on the webinar today, so we've got Kylie, who's the moderator, myself from Budgetly, and we've got Kirk from Tari Christian College. So again, welcome everyone, and we'll get into it. So where we're going to start with is expense management processes that exist at the moment. And they've been around for a long time. And the technology that is starting to emerge to be able to solve these problems is actually quite new in Australia. This type of automated expense management stuff has existed in other countries, other developed nations over the world, such as the United States and continental European countries as well, but it's actually relatively new to Australia. And what we find with a lot of the schools that we speak to and other education institutions as well is that there is a fair bit of frustration with the time that it takes to manage school expenses. You might find in your school that there may be a credit card or two floating around. It's usually the principals. Sometimes a business manager might have access to a credit card as well. You may find that there's a reimbursement policy at your school. So if a teacher or an employee needs to make purchases as part of their day-to-day operations, sometimes they may need to spend their own money and then fill out an expense claim, go through the reimbursement process and so on. Some schools that we talk to have a little bit of petty cash floating around as well. But yeah, they're generally the three main ways that we find that schools are managing expenses at the moment. And you've also got to look at the other kind of ways and circumstances in which you may need to make expenses as well, because it may be part of your day-to-day job as a teacher at the school. Sometimes you might go on an excursion and expenses may be incurred. Sometimes there may be some online purchases that need to be made. It could just be an ad hoc purchase. So I need to duck down to Officeworks and pick up some whatever supplies I need to actually educate the kids. So we've got sharing credit cards, we've got reimbursements, which are very apparent in a lot of schools at the moment, and sometimes some petty cash as well. And as I'm sure you can imagine, you've probably experienced it in your school at the moment, that there's a fair bit of admin that goes along with all of those. So starting there, we might actually take a poll with the audience, if we don't mind. If you can just tell us a little bit more about how expenses currently work in your school. You've got a couple of options in the poll to choose from. You can just tick one of them and away we go. So while the poll is up on the screen there, I'll keep on continuing with the next slide, but feel free to fill it out whenever you can. So now we'll get on to a little bit more of a deeper dive with those challenges with the current processes. So if you are a teacher and sometimes you need to spend your own money and apply to be reimbursed, or you're a member of the finance department in your school and you're part of the team that actually processes those reimbursements, there's a couple of steps that go along with that process, which I'm sure you understand. Pretend I'm a teacher and I need to spend my own money and get reimbursed. So I spend my own money and I've got the receipt in my hand, or if it's an online purchase, the receipt probably sitting in my email inbox. And that receipt, as well as the transaction information, need to get to our accounts team, as I'm sure we all know. And there's quite a few steps that go along with that. How does the receipt get back to the accounts team? If we're going through a reimbursement process, how does the reimbursement claim get filled out at the moment? Do you have a paper form for the reimbursement claim. A lot of schools that we're speaking to at the moment, they still do reimbursements, but they've moved it to a bit of an online system. Maybe you fill out a reimbursement claim online, you attach the receipt, how you need to attach the receipt. You need to fill out information in that. What was the purchase for? What department or budget is it coming out of? If I'm a teacher in the geography department and I need to purchase a new globe for the class, you may need to enter that specific information so that the finance team can categorize it correctly. And all of that takes time. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I've never met a teacher that got into this line of work to fill out all this information, to do this admin work. And these types of technological solutions that exist like Budgetly are here to automate all of that. So it just gets rid of all that so you don't have to do it. If you're looking at the purchases that are made from a credit card, we typically find with the schools that we talk to, maybe a principal has a credit card and the principal makes a purchase. And yes, that receipt still needs to go to the finance team. So there's time spent chasing that receipt. Sometimes the principal might be good at sending it through. Sometimes they might not so good. Typically, some schools that we talk to, sometimes that card gets shared, and then you need to identify, well, who was the person who made the purchase? Because the card holder is the principal, but it might not have been the principal in that particular situation. So then we've got to figure out who made the purchase, and then we've got to try and chase the receipt from that person, and so on and so forth. Going back to the reimbursements that we were talking about, sometimes there's a delay that's experienced with the reimbursements. Maybe the teacher's lost the receipt. Maybe there was a delay with the actual receipt getting attached to the reimbursement claim. Maybe there was a delay in the reimbursement claim getting back to the accounts team, the finance team, and maybe it missed the cutoff and the reimbursement's going into the next pay run. Every step of the way there is the potential for something to go wrong or be delayed, and all of that takes time. And then you've also got to look at the staff experience and spending your own money on the job. I mean, it's kind of what we do up until now, but it's not a great experience, right? And sometimes large purchases, I might not feel comfortable spending my own money on that, but it's something that I do need to purchase as part of my day-to-day experience. We do speak with a lot of schools who are coming to us and saying that we would like to improve our culture, remove that from the culture that we've got at our school. And that's one of the things that technology like Budgetly does. Not only does it save all of the time there, because it gets rid of all of this reimbursement process, it gets rid of any card sharing at all. Not only does it solve all these problems, but then you should, in my experience and with the teachers and the schools and the principals that we talk to and we interview, you should also have an improvement in what we like to call the staff experience. I'm actually just going to also talk about some interesting statistics that we've gathered at Budgetly. We talk to thousands of schools all the time, all over the country. And just from the last 12 months, we've asked a couple of questions to a fairly large sample size, a little over 1,000 schools that we've been talking to, just to find out where the time is being spent. Now, 55% of the schools that we spoke to told us that chasing receipts, whether they're missing or delayed, 55% of them said chasing those receipts take longer than 7.6 hours per week. Why the 7.6 hours? Well, that's about a full-time staff member 1 day per week. And yeah, 55% of them said receipts were taking that long. We had 70% of the schools that we spoke to during this time period say that there was in some capacity a shared credit card. It was typically the principal or the business manager had the credit card, but sometimes someone else might need to make the purchase. And then you've got the problems that go along with sharing that card as well, identifying who made the purchase, then getting the receipt back from that person, and so on and so forth. We found that 72% of the schools that we spoke to during that time period said that the whole reconciliation process took longer than 7.6 hours per week. So from chasing the receipt, potentially identifying who made the purchase, coding it correctly, figuring out what budget or what department it needs to be applied to, tracking the transactions and the expenditure against the actual budget amount, and then finally getting all that information into your accounting software. 72% of them said that that took longer than one full-time person 1 day per week. We had 31% of them tell us that there had been an instance where money had been spent from the incorrect budget, or money had been overspent, so we'd overshot the budget, or in some capacity, the rules themselves weren't followed as per our business and expense policy. And then lastly, we had 14% of those schools tell us that just the GST tracking for your GST tax credits took longer than the 7.6 hours per week. So we know from speaking to a lot of schools that there's plenty of room for improvements in the efficiency process there. So at this point, what I would like to do is we'll do another poll, which will pop up on the screen. And this one's a little bit more towards receipts. So if you could just fill out the poll as best you can, but we'd just like to get your thoughts on how the receipt capture process works at your school. And I'll give us 30 seconds to click those buttons. Yeah, we do find the receipt headache is usually the first and the biggest that schools tell us about when they talk to us. So thank you everyone who contributed in that poll there. It looks like we've got some answers up on the screen as well. And most people have indicated that, yeah, there sometimes are receipts that have been lost. Looks like we've had not a single person saying that they've never lost a receipt. So yeah, it looks like I do believe that, because even I've lost a receipt and I work at Budgetly. So yeah, that is information that we're hearing across the board as well when we talk to schools. So we'll move on to the next slide, and we're just going to dive a little bit deeper into the shortcomings that we were just talking about there. And starting with the manual data entry and the time spent. Anything that's data entry, anything that's chasing data from other people, it could be receipts, it could be information about the transaction. I mean, it has a probability of error. I mean, I should say possibility, but there will be a probability of errors incurring as well. Anytime there's manual data entry or administrative work required by a human being, there's inefficiencies, because a lot of this now can be automated by technology, albeit it is new in this country. And of course, delays in processing times can exist as well. And I just want you to think about how it works at your school at the moment. If it is the reimbursement process, every step of the way, every step that you need to take for that reimbursement to be complete, whether you're a teacher being reimbursed or whether you're part of the finance team who's responsible for processing them, just have a think about the steps that are involved, because every step has a possibility of inefficiencies, errors, or delays. The second box on the screen in the middle of the page is one we haven't quite discussed yet, but it's very important as well, and it's around the visibility on expenses. So again, if you think about how expenses are currently made in your school at the moment, pretend that you may be the principal of the school and you might be the card holder of a credit card, which is fantastic. You can tap your card and you've still got to get the receipt to the finance team. But I mean, you probably know what you're spending money on. But what about the finance team? At what point do they have visibility on those transactions? Do they have access to a portal where they can see the credit card statement, you know, when they wish to? Are they waiting for the credit card statement to be issued at the end of the month? And then also have a think about if it's reimbursements or petty cash or another way that you're using in your school. Have a think about the visibility. And this is primarily more for the accounts department themselves, the finance department. But when it's reimbursement, you don't know what money's being spent on until the reimbursement claim comes in. And I mean, everyone should have an expense policy within their business, within the school. And ideally, best practice is that when a new employee or teacher comes on board, they are acknowledging and signing that, yes, I'm going to adhere to this policy. But the point is, if an error or a misjudgment or some overspending occurs, or spending outside of the policy, you don't actually know about it until after it's already happened. And then you've got the dilemma with, okay, do we still process the reimbursement and try and help the person understand, look, that's outside of the business policy, please don't do it next time? Do we have a line in the sand where we say, look, unfortunately, we can't reimburse that because it's outside of the policy? So you've got to think about all of that as well. And the third box that we've got on the screen as well, which we did touch on a little bit earlier, but that staff experience that is important in any business, right? The culture that you foster, and you want you want your employees, you want your staff members, you want your team members to all be happy and, I'm happy to come to work. I'm here to teach kids and this is what I'm doing. And this is why I did all that study at university. And you don't necessarily want them to be bogged down with doing that paperwork. I mean, and I would argue you probably don't necessarily want them in a perfect world to have to spend their own money on their day-to-day duties. And then apply for it to get reimbursed. So there's some interesting things for us to think about on how expenses traditionally work. And now what we'll do, if it's okay with everyone, I'll go to the next slide. We're actually going to talk a little bit now about how using a solution like Budgetly can solve those problems. So with all the information that we've spoken about earlier, with a solution like Budgetly, and Budgetly is the leading one in Australia, but feel free to do your own Google searches and see what you can find. But with Budgetly, you click a few buttons. It takes 4 clicks, and it's usually the person in the accounts department who's running the show there, but you click 4 clicks and bing, you've got a Visa corporate card ready to go for a teacher, for an employee, whoever you need to give it to. Sometimes some of the schools that we have on board with Budgetly, they might have contractors, or in some cases volunteers for a particular event. So some of the things you can do with Budgetly is you click a few buttons and you can go bing, they've actually got a Visa corporate card on their phone instantly. You can then assign them budgets with spending rules. So you can say Bill can spend $50 a week and Bob can spend $100 a month. Or you can say the geography department, here's their budget for the whole term and they get to spend up to $2,800 and it's shared between 3 geography teachers. And it's kind of overseen by the head of the department there. And those budgets come with those spending rules to ensure that people can only spend what you want them to spend when they want it to spend, when you want them to spend it. So you'll never have any overspending ever again. The card literally won't work. So once you've set those rules, and I have $100 I'm allowed to spend on new globes for the geography classrooms. You can tell I haven't been to school in a long time because all I can think about is globes. But I've got $100 to spend on globes. If I try and spend $120, it just won't work. The technology prevents it from going through. So you set those smart rules. When I tap my card, so I've got my Budgetly card, I tap it, ready to go. And my phone's going to buzz me and say, you just bought something at Officeworks, take a photo of the receipt. And so the teacher or the employee or the contractor, whoever it is, they take a photo of the receipt, chuck the receipt in the bin, their job's done. And the finance team will have all the transactions as they're happening in real time. It's just displayed on the screen as they're happening. And it has all the information that you need. You can see when they spent the money. You can see where they spent the money. So did they spend it at Officeworks, or as someone said they were going to go buy a globe and they've actually spent it at KFC? You can see the person who has spent the money, the budget that it's come out of, the team, the department. You've got all the information you need. You've got your categorization, which is going to match up to your account codes in your accounting software. You've got any subcategorization such as job codes, campuses, location tracking, all that type of stuff. It feeds straight into your accounting software. And the best thing is you just click a button and the receipt pops up on the screen, which the person just took a photo of. And if you do have contractors or temporary employees or volunteers and things like that, the card that they have access to, you just set an end date on it and it just automatically shuts off when they don't need it anymore. So this type of solution is designed to remove all that admin and remove all the paperwork and remove all of what we like to call the headaches that go along with either managing reimbursements, sharing corporate credit cards, or if you, in some cases, have a bit of petty cash floating around, it'll get rid of all of that as well. One thing that's also really useful with this type of system, because everything is tracked instantly and all of the time, if you go through an audit, and I mean, if you're a private school or an independent school or something like that, you will most likely go through an audit every 12 months. And when it's audit time, all you have to do, let's pretend you need to bring up the receipts for purchases made for a particular time frame. You literally just go click, 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 and it'll go bing. And there's all of your receipts plus all the information you need to get through that audit. So that's a quick explanation of how this type of thing actually solves those problems for you. And hopefully your imagination can picture what I'm talking about there. Towards the end, as we get towards the end of the webinar that we're running here, for anyone that does want a bit of a deeper look on solving these problems, or even just talking to an expert, you know, maybe you're not ready to look at this type of solution, but you'd like to talk to an expert, there'll be a QR code that will flash on the screen, and you just scan it with your mobile phone, and it'll bring up the ability for you to get a free conversation or a free demo if that's something that you want. So I do hope all of that has made sense so far. What we'll do now is I'm actually going to turn it over to Kirk Pearce, Kirk from Tari Christian Community College. And Kirk's been a customer with Budgetly for almost 12 months now. And Kirk, we'd just love to hear about how your experience has been thus far.
Yes, as Matt said, we've only been a new customer for 12 months, but it's been so much easier keeping track of all my transactions. As Matt was saying, the portal I have on the computer is automatic. It comes in instantaneously. As soon as they spend money, I know about it. I can track it. I can keep tabs on it and everything like that. When teachers do it on their phone, they can even put a note on there. They can even tell you what it's for, kind of thing. So it makes it so much simpler to even adjust, and it syncs automatically with Xero. We use Xero here, and I can sync it into the Xero accounting package straight away, and any adjustments I need, it's straightforward. It's made life a lot easier. Every now and again, you still get a teacher that are, well, online stuff, the invoices and the receipts don't come exactly how you like to have it, but you just make do with what you can get. But other than that, it's been so much simpler and so much easier to use. I've not regretted ever using it. And as Matt was saying, set up your budgets. We have a staff of around about 100, but we have 10 cards that we've issued to different departments and staff, like food technology department, canteen, and it's so easy to use. Set budget each month, set and go, and that's it. It's just very, very basic, very simple, very easy to use. I can't fault it, and it's been so much easier. That's about all I can say, unless there's anyone else wants to ask any questions.
No, Kirk, that was great. Thank you for telling us about your experience thus far. If you don't mind, I'll just ask you a question or two.
Yep.
We're on this call together, so I should remember this, but was it mainly a reimbursement process you had prior to Budgetly? Was that how it worked?
We've used reimbursements before, but also we had corporate credit cards.
Yeah.
And as Matt was saying, you only get a certain number. Your business manager had one. Our business manager, head of secondary and principal had credit cards, and they'd lend it out to other teachers, and getting receipts, finding out you'd only get your reconciliation once a month to try and track down all your receipts and everything else. It's terrible. Whereas this is so much easier. And yeah, it's just so quick and easy.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. And just one more question for you, Kirk. I do remember speaking with you quite a while ago before we were using Budgetly, and you were kind of looking into it. And one of the things I remember you telling me was around how long the month-end process took. How would you compare month-end now compared to before Budgetly?
It's just so much more easier. It's just a matter, as I said, you just sync it. I just do it every maybe a couple of weeks, and then just have to go through and check to make certain it's all been categorized correctly, which it mainly is, because you set it up in your budgets at the first place. You may need a couple of changes, but it's over and done with. You know, it's an hour of that. Just
an hour for a month-end process. That sounds pretty good to me. Kirk, thank you very much for telling us about your experience and answering questions for me. When we do get to the end of the session, when we're going through Q&A, I'll be happy to answer any questions that anyone has about Budgetly. But if anyone has a question specifically for Kirk as well, I'm sure Kirk would be happy to answer it as best he can.
Yep.
So Yeah, just a few more bits and pieces around that. If you're a school that does not use Xero for your accounting software, don't worry, it's completely fine. You're just doing an export and import. If you use Xero, you click one button. If you're using something like Synergetics or TAS or Dynamics or Tech One, you're just doing an export and import. It's still quite easy. And our friendly onboarding team are here to help you with all of that stuff. If you end up using Budgetly, because obviously we welcome businesses in Australia, specifically schools, to be using Budgetly. All the training and setup and help and support, it's all free forever. You don't have to pay anything to speak to us to get help. Call us whenever you want. We give as much training as you want, so we'll help you with that type of stuff. But as Kirk mentioned, quite a few problems are solved with Budgetly, specifically around tracking and chasing receipts. You shouldn't really have to do that anymore with Budgetly. It should all be done for you. The month-end process, closing the books should definitely be a lot quicker. And of course, issuing cards. You click in a few buttons and you've got a card ready to go. So you don't have to fill out the paperwork or jump through the hoops that you would normally have to do with a bank. If you happen to be a private school as well, I realize we have private, public, independent, and so on, but if you happen to be a private school as well, you generally find that trying to get a credit card or a debit card from the bank, you'd need to get a couple of people from the board or the responsible persons to actually sign off on it. And there's a couple of steps you need to go through there. So issuing cards is literally 4 clicks of the button.
Yeah, well, that's right. We had ours issued within, what, 10 days, if that.
Yeah. So in the beginning of the process, when you're getting set up with Budgetly, as Kirk mentioned, we go through a bit of a compliance process, we call it, where we need to make sure that the business is real and we need to make sure that you're a real person. And so we do those checks and make sure everything's all good. But yeah, once that's all done, you control who you give the cards to. You don't need to call us to issue a card. You don't need to ask us. You're just clicking the buttons and you're giving the cards to your teachers and so on. If you want the virtual ones, they're instant. If you want the physical ones, we mail them out to you a couple of business days, depending on where you are. But yeah, once you go through that initial setup process, it should be a lot quicker than what you previously experienced. Would that be fair to say, Kurt?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, so much easier.
Yeah. So just looking on the page at the moment, you've kind of got the 3 main buckets for the outcomes or what your future state looks like with Budgetly. And efficiency is the first one, right? It's just everything should be a lot quicker. You should be saving so much time with all of the automation. And as I mentioned earlier, if you can remember the statistics I was talking about, we had so many schools of the little over 1,000 that we spoke to in the last 6 months mention that the problems that I mentioned earlier were taking them longer than 1 day per week with a full-time employee. So efficiency should be much better, whether it's issuing the card, whether it's having instant access to the receipt, even though the teacher just made the purchase 2 minutes ago, whether it's any of that stuff, it should all be a lot quicker. The automation part as well, a lot more of it will be automated for you when you use a system like Budgetly. So once you order the cards, you click a few buttons, you got a card, you set the spending rules. And Kirk also mentioned this as well. It's kind of set and forget unless you want to make a change. Bill gets $100 a week, but Bob gets $400 a month. The geography department, maybe we're going to give them an annual budget. They've got up to 28 grand in the whole year to spend. The point is that you can set your rules so it resets, it runs on a cyclic basis. And if it's for an excursion or once-off event type thing, you make a special budget for that. It automatically kicks in the night before the excursion. They have up to $500 to spend on bits and pieces, and then it automatically shuts off. And all the receipts and the transaction and the information is all available to your finance team instantly, even though the excursion or the event is happening in another geographical location. And lastly, one of the most important things that schools tell us that they enjoy about Budgetly is the control. So if you've ever experienced any spending outside of the policy, overspending, spending from the incorrect budget, any of that type of stuff, it doesn't happen with Budgetly. Because once you set those controls, the card obeys your rules. If you say Bill is only allowed to spend $100 a month and Bill attempts to spend $120, even if it's on school supplies, sorry, Bill, finance team said no. So the card gets declined. On that topic as well, we've got quite a few nifty little things that you can set up on the app too. In that situation, if Bill does need to spend $120, but Bill can see on his phone he's only allowed to spend $100, he just clicks a button, that pings whoever you want it to ping. It could be the business manager, the principal, whoever you would like. And Bill just asked for a bit more money. Hey, I actually need to spend $120 on globes. Is that okay with you? And whoever you ping it to, they would have authorization to say yes or no. And if they say yes, the card instantly has the money to spend. And if they say no, well, sorry, Bill, it's outside the policy. We said no. One of our customers that we have, there's a little over 100 schools that are using Budgetly at the moment. And one of our customers, they have 4 campuses for their school. And they've actually got it set up in a really, really cool automated way where the finance team in head office control all the budgets and things like that. The teachers at the different campuses have the cards and they're allowed to spend $100 a week, $500 a month, whatever it is. And if they do need to spend more money, they click a button on the app and it actually pings the principal at the corresponding campus because they have a separate principal at each campus. So the principal can approve the expenditure from X to Y. So if it's a little bit more money, the principal can just approve that by clicking a button. But if it's a little bit more over the top, then that itself needs to be approved from head office in the accounts department. So you've got quite a few rules you can set up with the control aspect of Budgetly. So just finishing off again with the story that Kirk was telling us, and just to summarize what you're going to get, you should be no more time chasing receipts. You should not have to do any more staff reimbursements at all. With Budgetly, by clicking 4 buttons to give a card with spending rules to whoever you want, you can get funds into the hands of your staff a lot quicker. And it should be complete end-to-end expense management. One of the things that we also really pride ourselves on at Budgetly is the world-class customer service that you receive. And I actually encourage you to have a look on independent review sites about Budgetly. You can go to Capterra, you can have a look at the case studies on our website, Gartner, things like that. And you can actually see what our customers say about using Budgetly, but specifically the customer service. We take it really seriously. You can always talk to a human. It doesn't cost you any money. You can have as much or as little help as you want. So we just got another great quote here from Kirk. And this is also on one of the case studies that Kirk's done for us on our website. But this is just a great one. The staff are not wasting as much time chasing up their receipts, and it's been a brilliant time saver. And Kirk did mention that in what he was saying earlier. We'll also just show you, here's a couple of quotes for some other schools that use Budgetly as well. We just picked some out. And again, you can view these on our website. You can go to an independent review site such as Capterra as well if you would like to see what customers say about us. But I mean, you can even see here from the principal at Aurora Steiner. We've always had great support from the team, very responsive, and we've managed to eliminate our previous clunky expense management process. You've got Lighthouse Christian School, again, talking about flexibility, cancelling, freezing, setting up budgets and things like that. And you got one from Faith Christian School over here on the right-hand side. We have saved a whole week every month of admin time. So that is pretty much all that myself and Kirk wanted to run through today with this webinar, just to recap a few things, because we do want it to be informative. With your current expense processes, have a think about how they currently work. Have a think about the steps that are involved in it. And because any step where there's data entry or admin work or things like that, you can use technology like Budgetly to automate that type of stuff. Have a think about your current expense processes and where you're lacking control or maybe lacking visibility. Have a think about the last time you tried to order a corporate card for one of your staff members. How long did it take? So just have a think about those type of things. And we're always happy to help as well. So you've got a QR code on the screen. And if you'd like to scan that with your phone, you can actually watch an on-demand demo of how Budgetly works. Of course, it's free, just for that, your information. You'll be able to download the video to watch it. If you'd like to talk to an expert, you can speak to any one of our friendly team members. And if you'd like to just ask a couple of questions, if you want us to help you with your current expense process, maybe even help you with tightening up your expense policy and things like that, it doesn't cost any money to talk to us. We're always happy to help. If you find that you would like to automate your expense process and you would like to receive these types of benefits, of course, Budgetly software is really, really well suited to schools. But if you do find that maybe you're not ready for that type of automation at this point in time, you can still talk to us for help and expert advice and things like that. We really do want to help. So what we'll do now is we'll turn it over to some Q&A. So Kylie, whenever you're ready, if there's any questions that are firing through, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Matt and Kirk, for such a truly helpful and insightful presentation. As Matt has said, we will start the Q&A section of today's webinar. I do have a couple of questions through already, Matt. I think most of them are for you. The first one is, with the receipt capture process, how does that work exactly?
Okay, cool. That's I kind of expected that question because we do find most of the schools that we talk to, that's kind of the biggest headache, missing receipts, tracking down the receipts, who spent what. So with the receipt capture with Budgetly, so you click a few cards and you give a Visa corporate card, a Budgetly card to the teacher or whoever needs it. So they've got a card. The next step is you give it spending rules. Bill's allowed to spend $50 a week. Bob's allowed to spend $100 a month. Once that's done, they're ready to go. So I've got the card in my hand. I go down to Woolies. I tap my card because I'm buying a barbecue chook. So once I tap my card, the phone in my pocket, because it's got the Budgetly app on it, the app's obviously free, it's going to buzz and say, you just bought a barbecue chook at Woolies, take a photo of the receipt. So the staff member takes a photo of the receipt, like right then and there, the receipt's in their hand, they just made the purchase, the phone asks them, it reminds them to take a photo of the receipt. So I take a photo of the receipt, they can literally chuck the receipt in the bin at that point. As soon as they take a photo of the receipt, it is instantly available for the finance team. So they're sitting in head office or on campus or wherever it is, and they can see instantly that the head of the geography department, Bill Smith, has just spent, I don't know how much a barbecue chook is, they've just spent $5 on a barbecue chook at Woolies. So just to summarize the receipt capture, teacher makes a purchase, their phone reminds them to take a photo of the receipt, they take a photo, that's all they need to do.
That's amazing. Thank you, Matt. The next question is, I've read there is budget control. Can you help me better understand that?
Yeah, so budget control. And what we mean by that is when you're providing cards to your staff, so you want to get funds in the hands of your staff members who need to spend money as part of their day-to-day job. But what you don't want them to do is overspend or spend outside of the policy and so on and so forth. So that's what the budgets in Budgetly do. That's your spend control. So when you're creating your budgets, you actually have quite a lot of flexibility. You can make a budget for the school year. You can make a budget for the term. You can make a budget for monthly, weekly, fortnightly. You can do it for daily if you want, or you could just do a one-off budget for a particular event. And when you're creating your budgets, you're setting rules that the cards will obey. So you may say that there's a budget for the geography department. There are 3 geography teachers who are allowed to spend from that money, no one else, only those 3 geography team members. They have up to $2,000 per month to spend on school supplies and so on. But Bill, the head of geography, is allowed to spend up to 1,000 of that, and Bob and Jane are only allowed to spend up to 500. So you set those rules and the cards obey it. And if they attempt to spend outside of those rules that you set, it just won't work. The card will say, no, finance team said no, guess decline.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. The next question. Can you elaborate a little more on the visibility with transactions? Is it instant?
Yes, so it is. So it ties into what we were saying earlier about the receipt question. So I tap my card, my phone buzzes me and asks me to take a photo of the receipt. And I take a photo of the receipt, chuck the receipt in the bin. The transactions are displayed for the finance team instantly. And the information that you get is on the main screen is when the purchase was made. So 12:55 on the 5th of December. You can see where they spent the money. So was it Coles, was it Woolies, was it KFC, or so on. You can see who spent it. You can see the budget that it's come out of. So you can see that Bill Smith, the head of the geography department, has spent from the geography budget. It's going to be categorized for you, which will match up to your account codes in your corresponding accounting software, whatever that may be. Now, you can set up automation where it categorizes it for you based on the expenditure, or you can just have the teacher click a button on the app. It's totally up to you. We offer you that flexibility. You have any subcategorization right there for you as well, including job codes and location tracking and things like that, whatever you need for your accounting software. And then right next to that, you've got the receipt, and you just click on it. Your finance team can just click on their computer and the receipt pops up on the screen. And then tying into what we said earlier, about 14% of the schools that we spoke to in the last 12 months saying that the GST component takes longer than one person's time per week, like for a full day. The GST is actually plucked off the receipt for you. So it should make your GST tax credits with your tax accountant a lot easier. And what I might also do with the transactions and the real-time visibility, Kirk, has that been your experience as well, that transactions are instantly available?
Yeah, it comes up in if you have. I have the portal up in the screen all the time, and as soon as teacher spends, it comes up automatically.
Yeah.
Pretty well much instantaneously.
Yeah, very good.
Great, thank you, Matt and Kirk. We have some more questions that have come through. The next one is from Rachel Thorne. If we have corporate cards set up with our bank, does Budgetly allow management of this facility, or would we be required to set up another credit facility?
Okay, so I'll answer that question, and there's actually a couple of components to that question. So with your current corporate credit cards, if you wanted to use Budgetly, you would need to issue Budgetly cards. So with the software, you'd issue new corporate cards. Now, just to also make sure that we're understanding correctly, Budgetly itself is not a credit facility. So it's actually a preloaded system. So with your Budgetly account, the best way to think about that is it's a business bank account in your name. So you transfer money into your Budgetly account. You transfer it from your current school bank account into your Budgetly account. Now, the authorised deposit-taking institution that sits behind the scenes is a bank called Cuscal Limited. So that's where the funds are held. You have the federal government's guarantee of up to 250 grand that's in there because it's an authorised deposit-taking institution. Now, that money is in your Budgetly account, and your Budgetly account is in your name. It is your money. We couldn't touch it if we physically wanted to or legally wanted to. It's all in your name, and it's held in a business bank account in your name as well. And what the Budgetly software does then is you set your budgets, and the budgets disperse those funds to the cards based on the rules that you set. So you could have $200,000 in your Budgetly account, but you set budget saying Bill only gets $50 a week and Bob gets $100 a month. Now, to try and continue answering the question there, you would need to issue Budgetly cards to have all the benefits of the system. So you wouldn't be able to use Budgetly with an existing corporate credit card. However, what a lot of schools do that we speak to is they'll have, say, 90%, 95% of the expenses that need to be made, they'll issue Budgetly cards for, and they'll get those done. And there might be a credit card or two that hangs around because maybe the principal loves some Qantas points or something like that. But just to summarize, if you do, to use the Budgetly system, you'd need to issue Budgetly cards. You wouldn't be able to use Budgetly with an existing credit card.
Yeah, and that's correct.
Thank you, Matt and Kirk. We have another question from David. If a teacher wanted to register for a professional learning course and then was challenged by the website for a credit card number, could the teacher enter a credit card number, expiry and CCV from the Budgetly app? If the cost was above the allowable amount, how quickly could the amount be increased?
Okay. So let's pretend in that situation, a teacher's attempting to purchase something online, a learning course or whatever it is. Now, in terms of entering the Budgetly card details online, if you've got a physical card, you'd be able to see it and type it in online like you would with any other card. If you have one of the cards on your phone, like a virtual card, yes, on the app, you click a button and you'll be able to see the card details ready to type in to make an online purchase. Now, if the purchase for the online course exceeds the rules of the budget that you or your finance team have already set, say, for example, the teacher's allowed to spend $1,000 this month on online learning courses, and the course is $1,200, when the teacher enters their cards, the transaction will be declined because it's exceeding the rules that you've set. However, What a teacher should do is if they jump on their phone, it's going to tell them how much money they're allowed to spend on online courses. So they can see I'm only allowed to spend $1,000. So typically what they do is click a button and say, Mrs. CFO or finance manager, whoever it is, the course is $1,200. Can I have a little bit more money? That will ping whoever you want it to ping. And then you click a button and you can approve it or decline it. If you click approve, they'll instantly be able to make the purchase. Now, just to address your question exactly how you asked it, how quickly would you be able to get the funds on the card if the transaction's been declined? Well, there's two things you can do. First of all, the person who has authorization to be able to give them extra funds needs to be made aware of it. That declined transaction, as soon as it happens, is instantly available for the finance team. They can see declined transactions. So you could see that Bill, the teacher, has attempted to spend $1,200 on an online learning course, and it will tell you why it's declined. We call them action logs, and it's your audit trail, and it will say Bill's transaction was declined because he tried to spend $1,200 at onlinelearning.com, but Bill's only allowed to spend $1,000. So you can use that information to contact Bill yourself, or Bill can contact you and say, hey, I've called you, I need to spend $1,200, and you can click a button and bing, give him the extra $200 to be able to spend. Or awesome. Bill can use the app. Click a button, can I spend some money?
Excellent. Thank you. I have one more question, unless there's any more to come through from our audience today. Again, for you, Matt, how quick is the card issuing process?
Okay, cool. So the card issuing itself, if it's you're clicking 4 buttons, you're going, who gets the card? Do I want virtual or physical? What do I want printed on it? Because it could be, you might want to print Bill Smith in the school, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then if it's a physical one, you just got to tell us where to send it. If it's a virtual one, you don't have to do that. But 4 clicks of the button, virtual ones are instant. Like literally instantly, the virtual card is issued on their phone. If it's a physical one, like this one in my hand here, we've just got to mail it out to you express post. So depending on where you are in Australia, a couple of business days. Australia, since COVID, Australia Post don't offer a 1-day guarantee on express post. So it's probably only 2 or 3 business days, but we do send them express post. I do just want to make a point though. When you do sign up to Budgetly, we do have a compliance process we go through. So we just got to check the business is real and things like that. But once that process is done, 4 clicks, virtual cards instant, physical ones, a couple of days.
Amazing. Well, that's very quick. Awesome.
It's very good.
Thank you so much, Matt and Kirk, for those great answers. And once again, for such a fantastic presentation today. To our audience, thank you for your invaluable participation. It is much appreciated. Just a reminder, of course, that the webinar recording will be emailed to you all. And in the meantime, on behalf of Budgetly and the Educator, we hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day. Thanks so much once again.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you.